My mother's laugh carried through the Bluetooth speaker on my dashboard like she owned the air itself. In a way, she thought she did. I sat in the parking lot of a gas station 3 blocks away, engine off, watching the live feed from the Nest camera I had installed above the kitchen cabinet 6 weeks ago. She was pouring champagne into crystal flutes that belonged to my aunt, the same aunt who had left me everything. My sister was dancing in the living room. Not our living room, mine. They thought I was in Seattle at a conference. They had no idea I had driven 11 hours straight, that I was sitting 50 yards from the interstate exit with a manila folder on my passenger seat and a phone call already placed to the county sheriff's department. My name is Claire Merritt. I am 31 years old. I have a master's degree in digital forensics. And for the past 4 years, I have been the person companies call when they suspect someone on the inside is stealing from them. I reconstruct financial crimes for a living. I find the invisible thread that connects a forged signature to a wire transfer to a vacation someone paid for in cash. I am very good at my job. It took me longer than it should have to turn that skill on my own family. That is the part nobody warns you about. The professional distance you carry into a boardroom evaporates completely when the suspect is the woman who taught you to ride a bike. But I am getting ahead of myself. My aunt, Patricia, died 18 months ago. She never married, never had children of her own, and she spent 40 years building a coastal rental property in Galveston into something remarkable. A 4-bedroom house 2 blocks from the seawall, fully furnished, generating steady income from short-term rentals every summer. She left it to me, not to my mother, not to my sister. To me, specifically, because she had watched what happened when money entered our family's orbit and she had made her decision accordingly. The will was clear. The deed transferred without contest. My mother stood at the reading with her arms folded and her jaw tight, and she said nothing, and I made the mistake of reading her silence as acceptance. I was living in Dallas at the time, deep into a contract engagement, and the rental property felt like something I would deal with properly once things slowed down. My mother offered to manage it in the interim. She had retired early, she said. She knew the area. She knew how to deal with guests and maintenance, and the quirks of that particular house. She said she would handle the bookings and take a reasonable management fee and transfer the rest directly to me. I said yes. That was my first mistake. For the first 3 months, deposits appeared in my account like clockwork. Not large, but consistent. I was busy. I trusted her. The deposits stopped in month 4, and she sent me a long message about an HVAC repair, a burst pipe, an unexpected gap in bookings. I transferred her money to cover it. She thanked me and said things would pick up in summer. Summer came. I received 2 deposits. Both were smaller than any single weekend rate I had seen on the listing she had set up. When I asked about it, she said tourism was down. The platform had changed its algorithm. There had been a problem guest who had left a bad review. Each reason was plausible. Each reason was delivered with the weary patience of someone who was working very hard on my behalf and was mildly hurt that I was questioning it. By the time I started pulling the actual data, 14 months had passed. I did not go looking for a crime. I went looking for clarity. I pulled the booking platform transaction logs under my account credentials, which my mother had never thought to change because she assumed I never checked. What I found sat in my chest like a stone. The property had been fully booked for 11 of the 14 months. Peak summer rates, extended winter stays from remote workers, a recurring monthly reservation from a corporate travel account. The gross revenue over that period was just over $68,000. I had received $9,400 of it. I sat with that number for a long time before I let myself feel anything. Then I started pulling threads. The platform account was in my name, but the payout routing had been changed to a joint checking account I did not recognize. I pulled the account through the bank records I requested under my own name and found it had been opened 8 months earlier by my mother, with my sister listed as a co-holder. My name was on the account paperwork, signed in a handwriting that was close to mine but not quite right. The loops were too even. My mother had always been meticulous. She had practiced. The HVAC repair she had billed me for had never happened. The contractor she cited had no record of any work order for that address. The pipe repair was real, but the invoice I received had been altered. The original, which the plumber emailed me directly when I called to verify, was for $800. The version my mother sent me was for $2,200. There was more. I kept pulling. My sister had filed for a small business license using the property address as her registered location. She was operating a short-term rental management company. On paper, with my house as her flagship listing, collecting a management fee from the diverted income that she had been reporting as business revenue to establish a financial history. It was clean work. It would have held up if no one with my particular skill set had ever looked at it. But someone with my particular skill set lived here. I found the HELOC 2 weeks before the night I drove to Galveston. A home equity line of credit, opened against the property, for $40,000. My signature on the application. The same careful forgery. The loan proceeds had been dispersed in 2 installments, both wired to my sister's management company account. The balance had not been touched. The interest was accumulating monthly, attached to my property, in my name, without my knowledge. That was when I stopped being sad and started being precise. I did not confront them. I did not call my mother and ask her to explain. I know what happens when you tip off a suspect before you have everything you need. They shred. They delete. They rehearse. I had spent enough years watching people burn down evidence rooms to know that the most dangerous thing I could do was let them know I was coming. Instead, I spent 3 weeks building the case the way I would build it for a client. I pulled every document, cross-referenced every transaction, had the signature forgeries analyzed by a handwriting expert I had worked with on previous engagements. I contacted the county and discovered my mother had also attempted to file a change of address for property tax notices, rerouting them to her own mailbox so any official correspondence would reach her before me. I installed the cameras remotely, using the smart home hub login that my mother still had connected to the account she had stolen from me. I spent one evening, very quietly, creating a secondary admin account with full access and demoting her credentials to guest status. She never noticed. Why would she? She had stopped thinking of me as someone capable of fighting back a long time ago. I need to tell you about the moment that changed something fundamental in me, because there is always a moment. And mine came on an unremarkable Tuesday in March. I had driven down to Galveston to do a visual inspection without letting them know I was coming. I parked 2 streets over and walked. I wanted to see the property. I had not seen it since the week after my aunt's funeral, and standing in front of it, I felt the specific grief of watching something that was supposed to be yours become unrecognizable. My sister's car was in the driveway. There were new wind chimes on the porch that I had not chosen. There was a succulent arrangement in the front window that I had not put there. Through the side gate, I could see that the backyard, which my aunt had kept as a simple grassy space, had been converted into a staged outdoor lounge area, a string of market lights, a fire pit, a wooden sign that read something about living slowly. All of it photographed beautifully in the rental listing. I was sure. All of it paid for, I would later confirm, with money that should have been mine. I turned to leave and nearly walked into my mother, coming from the direction of the beach. She was in sunglasses and linen. She looked relaxed. She looked like a woman who was thoroughly enjoying her retirement. She saw me and stopped. For exactly 4 seconds, neither of us said anything. I watched something move through her eyes. Not guilt. Not yet. Something calculating. The internal rapid fire of a person who needs to get to the right story before the conversation starts. She got there fast. She always did. "Claire," she said, pulling her sunglasses down. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I would have prepared the house." She said it warmly. Like I was a guest, like it was her house. I smiled and told her I was just passing through, that I had a work call to get back to, that I had only wanted to see the place. I watched her shoulders drop a fraction of an inch, relieved. I noted that too. I drove back to Dallas and finished building my case. The night I returned to Galveston, I was ready. I had already spoken to the sheriff's department 3 days prior, not to file a report yet, but to establish the situation and ask what would be required. I had spoken to a real estate attorney who had reviewed the deed, the HELOC paperwork, and the signature analysis report. I had a typed summary of the financial fraud with corresponding documentation organized into numbered exhibits. The whole thing was 61 pages. I had also, that afternoon, used my admin access to the smart home system to do a few things my mother and sister were not aware of. I changed the Airbnb account payout routing back to my personal account. I remotely revoked their key fob access codes, which they had programmed without telling me, and I waited until 9:30 in the evening, when the camera feed showed both of them settled in, before I started driving. My mother was on the couch with a glass of wine. My sister was in the guest room I had always thought of as mine, the one with the best view of the water, editing something on her laptop. She was probably writing a caption for whatever content she had shot that week. My sister had been trying to build a lifestyle brand for the better part of 3 years. She called herself an intentional living creator. She had about 12,000 followers and a management company funded by my stolen rental income. I parked in the lot of a seafood restaurant a short walk away. I called the sheriff's department to let them know I was on site and to request a deputy, as we had discussed. The dispatcher confirmed someone would be there within 20 minutes. I sat in the dark and watched the feed. My mother refilled her wine. My sister came out of the bedroom and said something I could not hear. My mother pointed at the kitchen and my sister laughed. I thought about my aunt. I thought about the way she had looked at me when I was young, like she could see something in me that I had not found yet. I thought about the summer she taught me to navigate by the stars because she said, "You should always know how to find your way back without depending on anyone else to show you." I thought she would have appreciated the cameras. When the patrol car's headlights swept the street, I picked up the folder, got out of the car, and walked. I knocked on the front door. There was a pause. Then footsteps. The porch light came on and the door opened, and my mother stood there in her reading glasses, with her wine glass in her hand, and the exact same 4-second calculation happened behind her eyes. This time I did not give her time to finish it. "Hi," I said. "I need to come inside." "Claire." Her voice was warm and confused in equal measure. "Sweetheart, it's almost 10. What are you?" "I know about the payout account," I said. "I know about the HELOC. I know about the management company." The wine glass did not move. That was interesting. A genuinely surprised person would have flinched. She had already started building the next story before I had even finished the sentence. "I don't know what you think you found," she said. "But I can explain all of it. The account was for administrative purposes. There were tax reasons. There's a sheriff's deputy coming up the driveway," I said. She turned. The porch light reached far enough that she could see the uniform. She turned back to me, and the warmth was gone entirely. And what was underneath it was something I recognized from my childhood. A cold, controlled fury at being caught. "You called the police on your own family," she said. "I called the police because someone forged my signature on a $40,000 loan against my property," I said. "If that someone is a stranger, I call it fraud. The relationship doesn't change what it is." My sister had appeared in the hallway behind my mother. She was in a sweatshirt and her hair was up and she looked younger than she was, and for 1 second I felt it. The pull of memory. The version of her that was 8 years old and used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides. I let myself feel it for exactly as long as it was true. And then I looked at the property address on the documents in my hand. And I walked inside. The deputy was professional and calm. He had been briefed on the situation. I handed him the folder, and he went through it methodically, while my mother stood near the kitchen island and my sister sat on the edge of the couch. My mother tried 3 different approaches in the first 10 minutes. The first was administrative confusion. She said the account had been set up with my knowledge for tax efficiency purposes. She said I had agreed to it verbally. She said she had documentation of that agreement somewhere that she would need time to locate. The second was emotional reframe. She told the deputy I had been under significant stress and that she was worried about my judgment. She said the property had been a source of anxiety for me since my aunt's death, and that I had sometimes expressed wanting to be relieved of the responsibility of managing it. She said all of this with the measured sadness of a woman who is very patient with a very difficult daughter. I had anticipated both of these. They were in the folder. There are printed transcripts of every text exchange I have had with my mother about this property over the past 18 months, I told the deputy, pointing to the relevant tab. In none of them did I agree to a joint account, authorize a management company, or discuss a home equity loan. The deputy turned to the section. My mother moved to her third approach. She said there had been a conversation over the phone, not in text, and that I had been present and agreeable, and that she could produce witnesses. "Who?" I asked. She paused. "My sister," she said. Jade was on the call. She heard everything. My sister, who had been very quiet, looked up. "Jade," my mother said, with a specific inflection I had heard her use since we were children. The inflection that meant, "You know what to say." My sister opened her mouth. "Before she answers," I said, handing the deputy a second document. "This is the registration record for the management company my sister incorporated. It lists this property as its primary managed asset and shows 11 months of management fee revenue. That revenue came from the diverted rental income. If she confirms the account was legitimate, she is simultaneously confirming she was a knowing participant in the scheme." My sister closed her mouth. The deputy looked at the registration document. He looked at my mother. He looked at the carefully forged signature on the HELOC application. He asked my mother, very specifically, whether she was the one who had signed my name on that document. My mother said she wanted to call a lawyer, which is its own kind of answer. While the deputy stepped outside to call for a supervisor, my sister found her voice. She stood up, and she started talking fast, and I recognized this mode too. It was the mode she used when she was in trouble, and needed to shift the gravity of the room, to make enough noise and motion that everyone got disoriented and forgot what they had been focused on. She said I had abandoned the property. She said my mother had poured her own retirement savings into maintenance and improvements. She said I had barely visited since the funeral and that someone had to keep the asset from deteriorating, and that they had done me a favor and I was punishing them for it. I let her finish. "Show me the receipts," I said. "What?" "The maintenance expenses. The improvements. If money was spent on this property from your personal funds, there would be invoices, bank records, contractor agreements. Show them to me, and I will credit every dollar against what is owed." She did not show me anything. She sat back down. The supervisor arrived 20 minutes later. I went through the folder again, this time more quickly, because I had gotten better at explaining it. Signature forgery on a financial instrument, fraudulent diversion of rental income through an unauthorized account, a management company operating without a disclosed conflict of interest on an asset its principals did not own, potentially, depending on how the HELOC proceeds had been used. Bank fraud. My mother called her lawyer from the kitchen. I could hear the low, urgent murmur of someone explaining a situation that had gone badly wrong. The supervisor asked to see proof of ownership. I had a certified copy of the deed. He asked for the handwriting analysis. I had the report from the expert, with his credentials and methodology attached. He asked about the smart home system and I showed him the account logs, the payout change history, the dates of each administrative action taken under my mother's credentials. "When was the last time you personally accessed this account?" he asked me. 6 weeks ago when I reclaimed admin access, I said. Prior to that, I had not logged in for approximately 14 months. The access history in that tab shows every login event with IP addresses, My mother's home IP is highlighted. He looked at the document for a long time. My mother's lawyer called back. She took the call in the hallway. I heard her say the word cooperative several times, which I recognized as legal positioning. When she came back into the living room, something had shifted. The warmth was gone. The calculation was gone. What was left was something older and quieter and, I thought, almost relieved, in the way that someone who has been running for a long time looks when they finally stop. She did not look at me. She looked at the floor and she said, in a very flat voice, that she would like to discuss a civil resolution. That's between you and my attorney, I said. I handed her a business card for the real estate lawyer I had retained. She will be in contact Monday morning. My sister stood up then. She did not say anything intelligent. She said that I had always been the favorite, that my aunt had never given her anything, that nobody had ever thought about how it felt to be the one who was overlooked. She said it with the furious righteousness of someone who had told themselves a story so many times it had become indistinguishable from their actual memory. I had heard versions of this her entire life. I knew she believed it. I also knew it did not change a single line item on the forensic accounting report. You're welcome to raise that at the civil proceeding, I said. Tonight I need you both to leave the property. My mother looked up. This is our home. Your lease expired, I said. She blinked. You filed a management agreement with your company that included a 12-month occupancy clause, I said. I have the document. The clause ended 63 days ago. You have been holding over without consent since then. I am formally revoking that consent now, in the presence of a law enforcement officer, which satisfies the notice requirement under Texas Property Code. The supervisor confirmed, in a measured tone, that this was accurate. My mother looked at my sister. My sister looked at the door. Neither of them had anywhere to go. They gathered what they could carry in 20 minutes. I stayed in the living room while the deputy waited by the front entrance. I heard drawers opening and closing, the zip of a suitcase, a brief heated exchange in hushed voices from the hallway. My mother passed me on the way out. She stopped. She was carrying a canvas tote bag full of things from the kitchen, and she looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before, and I realized, after a moment, that it was something close to regret. Not for what she had done. I did not think she had gotten there yet, but for the fact that it had not worked. I did what I thought was best for this family, she said. I know you believe that, I said. She walked out. My sister did not stop. She kept her eyes down and moved through the front door without looking at me, and the deputy closed it gently behind them. I stood in the living room of my aunt's house for the first time since the week of her funeral, and I listened to the quiet, the wind coming off the water, the faint creak of the market lights my sister had strung up in the backyard, the refrigerator hum from the kitchen. It smelled like someone else's candles. There were decorative objects I did not recognize on every surface. The careful curation of someone who had been staging a life here that was not theirs. I would need to go through all of it. Not tonight. I found the original throw blanket my aunt had kept folded on the back of the couch, the soft green one she had owned since before I was born, and it was still there, tucked underneath a newer blanket my sister must have put on top. I pulled it out and sat down and wrapped it around my shoulders. The forensic case documentation was still open on the coffee table. 61 pages, 14 months of diverted income, a forged signature on a $40,000 loan, a management company built on a fraud. I closed the folder. Outside, a car engine started and pulled away. The house was mine again. I stayed there for a while in the green blanket, listening to the water, not doing anything in particular except letting the silence settle around me like something I had earned the right to occupy. My aunt used to say that the most underrated thing a person could own was a quiet place that was genuinely theirs. A place where nobody else got to decide what the lights were set to or what was playing or how cold it was. She had been right. She usually was. I reached over and adjusted the thermostat to 68 degrees, the temperature she had always kept it, and I listened to the old house breathe itself back to normal. There is a version of this story where I tell you I felt victorious. I do not know if that is the right word. What I felt was more like solid, like something uncertain and soft that I had been carrying for too long had finally been set down on a level surface and found its own weight. The civil proceedings are ongoing. My attorney has filed to recover the diverted rental income, the altered invoice overcharges, and the HELOC balance, which I have been making payments on out of pocket since I discovered it, because my credit and my property are not abstractions to me the way they apparently were to the people managing them. The handwriting expert's report has been submitted as part of the discovery record. My mother's attorney has twice requested informal mediation. My attorney has twice declined on the grounds that the documentary record speaks clearly enough. My sister sent me a text message on a Tuesday night, 6 weeks after that evening. It was long. It covered a lot of ground. It blamed our grandmother, our childhood, a series of perceived slights stretching back to when we were in elementary school. It said things about me that were designed to hurt, and some of them landed and some of them didn't, and I read it twice and then I put my phone face down on the kitchen counter. I did not respond. There are people in your life who mistake your patience for weakness, and your kindness for an open account they can draw from indefinitely. They are not confused about what they are doing. They are counting on the fact that you love them too much to call it by its right name. I called it by its right name. I changed the smart home password to something 20 characters long. I updated the deed notification contacts with my personal email. I rehired the original property management company my aunt had used, a local firm with a 40-year reputation and absolutely no personal connection to anyone in my family. This summer, the house is fully booked. Peak rates. The deposits come directly to my account now, every Tuesday. Like a very small and satisfying kind of justice. I visited last month and sat on the porch in the evening and watched the water, and I thought about my aunt and how she had built something real, carefully, over a lifetime, and then chosen to leave it to someone she believed would protect it. I think she knew something about me that I had not fully known yet. I do now.